Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. My name is Brandon, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Sherrie Peif, an award-winning veteran investigative reporter covering politics and policy throughout Colorado. Well, Sherrie, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
I am, and thank you, Brandon. It's always fun to be on with you.
Well, Sherrie, you recently wrote about an historic letter from the Colorado High School Activities Association, CHSAA, that was signed by about 60 school district administrators and school board members from across Colorado that is calling for an end to biological boys competing in girls' sports. And, Sherrie, honestly, I'm a little surprised this happened. What's the context here?
Me too, because this is one of those topics that everybody is kind of scared to talk about, because nobody wants to be labeled a bigot or a racist or, all this other transphobia. But I think that if there's one thing that a lot of people can agree on is men are built differently than women. And it doesn't matter what you want to be later in life. If you were born with male genes, you are still, even if you take, all the blockers and all this other stuff, you are still naturally going to be stronger and are built differently than women, no matter how you look at it. And so as this controversy over the years has developed over transgender rights, and you see more and more college athletes and professional athletes, women coming out against competing against men. I think most recently it was a fencing woman who decided to take a knee and not compete. The University of Wyoming, University of Utah, both refused to play a college team because they had a transgendering. Anyway, so as this is happening more and more and the athletes are coming forward, I think it's empowering more people to say, listen, I don't care what you do with your life. I don't care who you love. I don't care if you were born female, want to be male, born male, want to be female. That's fine. But we have fought for women's rights for so many years. Title IX was originally about women's rights. And now we've gone in the opposite direction. Now we're allowing men to come in and take over, not take over, but start to join, and in some cases take over some of those records. We saw it, with Thomas in the swimming competition. So with Colorado passing all these transgender protection laws, I think it has empowered some of these school districts and some of these board members and some of these principals and stuff to say enough is enough. We have to start protecting our girls. We have to start protecting our children, allowing them to do what we've been fighting for them to do for so long. And I think this letter was probably spurred by recent events in the Thompson School District up in Loveland, where one of the board members, Nancy Rumfelt, wore a T-shirt to a board member one night that said, "Real women rock" or something like that, something to that effect. And oh my gosh, it started this outpouring of, we hate you, Nancy. So for complete transparency, the Thompson School District and all of its teachers union and its director of communications can't stand me. They can't stand Nancy. They can't stand Amy Cook. So anytime anything goes wrong, we get blamed for it. So I had nothing to do with any of this, but yet the Thompson School Board watch page had me all over it like the day out. I mean, it's crazy. So I think the outpour from Nancy's T-shirt is kind of what spurred this. And she was obviously one of the school board members that was on it. But they wrote this letter, they got together and they hired an attorney and they had the attorney draft it up. And they sent this letter to the Colorado High School Activities Association, just basically, and it just says briefly, uh, let me see if I can find the letter. I'm looking at the wrong page and I apologize. It says it's not only a matter of safety and fairness for a female athlete, but it also aligns with recent federal directives that reinforce the protection of women's sports under Title IX. And I think that's another layer of it. It's, the Trump administration has started coming down with a lot of these executive orders when it comes to women in sports and DEI and SEL and all these other acronyms that have caused so much controversy over the years. So about over 60 board members in the state of Colorado, board members, teachers, administrators, coaches, signed this letter to CHSAA saying, protect our girls, get boys out of their sports, start making the teams according to what their birth sex was.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely historic in my mind just because it's something that has been going on for a while. Like you said, people are afraid to talk about it. And it seems with some of these changes at the federal level, we're starting to see some of those changes now at the local level, which I think is really interesting that people maybe are, like you said, more comfortable or feel empowered to talk about these things. And I got to think too, these school district administrators, the school board members, these people who are, they're on the front lines of all of this. They're down there with the students. They see these things happening. And while we might not hear about it on the mass media or things like that, but at these local levels, they're seeing things like this happening. And of course, they want to protect their students and want to ensure that these girls have a fair shot. So, coming from them, I think is so important. It's not coming from somebody who's not involved, but these are people who are definitely involved in the school system. And I think that's a really powerful message for sure.
No, absolutely. And what they asked for them to do is, and I'm looking at my story as we're talking, what they asked for them to do was revise bylaws to restrict girls who are biologically female, establish clear eligibility criteria and verification processes, and provide guidance to members on school on how to implement these changes. Because that you can't just say, we're going to do this without some sort of guidance. They're not asking for something to change overnight. They're not asking for something to for it to be mean or uncaring or any of that kind of stuff. Again, most people don't care how people live their private lives. It's just I have an only child. He's a boy. He was a swimmer and a golfer and a baseball player. And he will tell you, and he was a competitive swimmer, and he will tell you every day of the week that it doesn't matter how small he is. If he could have gone to college and play and swam on the women's team, he probably would have been one of the best swimmers there was. But he didn't go to college and swim because he didn't have the size. He played baseball, he played golf. And he'll stand for that every day of the week. So I think that's just kind of what it finally boiled down to is we have to get back to I remember I'm old enough to remember the Equal Rights Amendment, and I have been following this since the 70s when we have been fighting so hard for women's right to vote. There was the suffrage movement, there was everything else. And now we're going backwards. Now we're telling girls that they don't get to have their own sports because we have to take a very small percentage of our population and cater to that small percentage of that population so that we don't look like we're bigots.
Yeah, it is wild. It's absolutely crazy just seeing this happen over the last few years. And I think people didn't know what to make of it, but thankfully now we have people standing up and speaking out. And like the school board member that you mentioned wearing the t-shirt, Nancy Rumfelt there saying, real women rock. I mean, and it's wild that that's controversial, like, to say that.
Yeah,
And of course it's the real part, right? If it just said women rock on her shirt, nobody
right.
probably would have said anything. But the real women, and they're like, oh, what are you trying to say here? You're trying to say who's a real woman or not. It's
Right.
like, I mean, it's it's absolutely crazy. You get 70 people showing up, spitting fire, getting upset about this. But I think we're seeing hopefully a little bit of a sea change here, a change in the tides at least. Where people are kind of pushing back on this and standing up for these girls' sports. So it's great to see, and I really appreciate your reporting on it for sure.
Absolutely, and I'm with you. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I personally don't think a lot can happen in Colorado simply because of legislation that has passed that says, I mean, now we've got this bill that says if you as a parent don't recognize that your 5-year-old wants to be a boy instead of a girl, we're going to send social services in and rip them out of your house. I mean, Colorado has gone so extreme when it comes to parents don't have rights anymore, and we're just going to let 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds decide. I remember back when I was that age. And I still am, Brandon. I'm one of the biggest tomboys on the planet. But I also know who I am, and I also know that I'm a female, and I have no intention to be a man. I have boyfriends. I've always had boyfriends. I always want boyfriends. But that's my choice, my decision. Nobody ever, when I was 7, 8 years old, wanting to go play, baseball or football or basketball with the boys, ever said to me, "Are you sure, Sherrie? Do you think that maybe we should start going through some sort of transitional phase here?"
Right. Absolutely wild. Yeah, it's crazy how things have gotten this far, but I really appreciate especially Complete Colorado because I read your article and when it came out and you really kind of broke the story for what I saw. I didn't see it anywhere else. I saw it posted there. I always look for your articles, of course, because you have great material and always kind of getting this stuff out in front of
Thank you.
everybody. And then this came out, and then a week later, the Denver Post reports on it. It's like they're so behind the curve compared to what you and what Complete Colorado's doing. So that was really cool to see because I've been a big fan of Complete Colorado for so long and just can't speak highly enough about it. And people need to check it out, especially the new revamped website. Read Sherrie's articles and check out CompleteColorado.com to find out all this stuff that the media doesn't necessarily talk about. And if they do, they're always a couple weeks behind what Sherrie's writing about. So great
Thanks,
stuff,
man.
Sherrie.
I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, I hope to talk to you again soon. Any other thoughts on this article specifically?
No, I think it was very brave of the school board members and the administrators and stuff to write it because if there's one thing that we know about schools and students and teachers and unions the most thankless job on the planet is that of a school board member because the one thing that everybody is passionate about is their children. And it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on, we are all very passionate about your children. And having been an education reporter for 15 years myself, I have seen both extreme sides of that. And it's not easy to come out and say this type of thing, this is what I want, because now every single one of those people, their name is public, and you can see it by clicking on the letter in my story. Every single person put a public name on it. And even Nancy, when I called her, said, I'm shocked the letter went out. I didn't think we'd get anybody to sign it. And she goes, the fact that we had over 60 people sign it is amazing to me. She didn't even think that many people would be willing to stand up for that because now they're going to face the wrath of their school district, the teachers and the parents that are on the opposite side. And those are generally the loudest, the ugliest, and the meanest.
Definitely. Yeah, well said for sure. And hopefully, history will vindicate them, the people who are standing up for girls' sports and the people willing to speak out. It's not always popular. Times can be tough, but those who speak truth and stand up, they're definitely the leaders in the community, and we got to applaud them and support them when they do it. So I'm glad you mentioned that too about the letter. If you go to Sherrie's article, which of course I'll link to, you can actually read that letter yourself. So check that out, dig in there, and especially if you have kids in school, this is something important to pay attention to for sure. So really appreciate your time, Sherrie. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Brandon.